Okay, morning. So before I start doing the thing that I'm meant to be doing, I'm going to try and break through my morning energy by talking enough that my voice warms up. And also, I'm going to try talking without the mic and just test what the sound is like on that. No? Definitely a mic situation. I'm okay with it. I just wanted to double check just in case. Great. I feel a little bit warmer. Slowly awakening. So this is my face, for those of you that weren't sure. This is a photo of me on my sister's balcony a year ago. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is entitled, I studied languages at university. I studied international relations and French and Spanish. So my great passions are a great love of politics and a great love of language. So I've based my presentation around prepositions. Does anyone know what a preposition is? So like the little in-betweeny words, from, at, with, stuff like that. So love from Zahra, it's me, and other prepositions. It gets better, I promise. So, intro, who am I? What do I do? Is it all right if I sit down? Can people still see me? Yeah. Yeah? Is that? No? All right, okay. Mike, standing up, so many demands. Okay, let's do this properly. What I do. I am an activist. I've got a background in food justice. So I worked for a while dealing with community food issues. So that's trying to protect community spaces for the use of good food for local people, land distribution and redistribution of land. I worked on a few campaigns around trying to reframe the way that we think about housing issues and food issues as land issues. So we talk about what's underneath that, the land and the food stuff, which is the food and the housing stuff, which is the land, who owns the land, and how do we shift ownership of land. I work on a lot of anti-racism stuff and black liberation campaigns, so specifically anti-black racism, as well as all kinds of other isms and schisms, basically. So I've been working for about 4 years looking at in various different ways of looking at inequality from the perspective of activism. So my work at the moment that I think best pertains to what I'm going to talk about today is what I call anti-oppression facilitation. So I hold a lot of space for political organizing with an anti-oppression practice at its core. And I'll go into a little bit more detail about what that means. But essentially, it's about trying to create spaces that are for liberation and emancipation of life at the same time as we do political organizing. So I will talk for a little bit about kind of like how I came to be here before I start going into my lovely prepositions and what they all mean. So there's two questions that I'm going to be responding to specifically. And these are kind of as articulated by the organizers and then sort of reframed for myself. So just to give you a bit of context about where I'm coming from with what I'm saying. The first question is, what is your praxis of love and kindness as a foundation for a new politics? That's the sort of where I'm coming from. Is it useful if I repeat that? Okay. What is your praxis for love and kindness as a foundation for a new politics? So then my thinking about what I do and actually what that looks like, the question then became, for me, how do you create and hold spaces that are rooted in love as the baseline for social organization in the name of socioeconomic and political change? It's a very long question, so I'll do that one again also. How do you create and hold spaces that are rooted in love as the baseline for social organization in the name of socioeconomic and political change? So that's what I've been thinking about in writing this. So that's just to give you a bit of context of what I'm on about. So why love? So the idea of anti-oppression practices, that comes out of a dialogue which says that the problems that we talk about and that we campaign about aren't like out in the world somewhere far away that we can't find. They're in us, they're in the way that we were socialized, or they're in the way that we relate to each other. So whether it's racism, sexism, homophobia, colonialism, these are mind frames and ways of behaving as well as systems of oppression. So they're not out there, they're in the rooms and the corridors that we work in. So we work to unlearn them in the spaces that we operate from. So if we want things to be different out there, we have to be different in here. We can't just do the work with our heads and then assume that people's hearts will follow. We have to do the work with our hearts and with our heads and with our bodies and with our spirits, collaboratively. And so if we're building a more equal way, we have to do it, more equal world, we have to do it in a more equal way to distribute power, resources, and space for a world where care, love, and compassion can thrive. So after a lot of time of working on a sort of justice-based approach, I started thinking more about a love-based approach. And I think for me, especially doing a lot of anti-racism work with people of color, so much is about combating the oppressions that we face every day. So it's important to center our healing and work in a way that is freeing for us, and so that we can thrive, not materially, but spiritually, and like create cultures of thriving and freedom in the way that we organize. And that starts us off on our first preposition. Oh, that was the thing I just did. So, love with /in. This one, I think you might have already spent quite a lot of time on in your love series that I've sadly missed. So I won't spend as much time on this. But this is all about the inner work. This is the love within ourselves, with ourselves, in ourselves. So it's the work to see myself and all my flaws and love myself regardless, and invite others to step into more intimate and emotional connection spaces so that we can do more deep listening between each other, learn how to treat each other and be whole with one another. And the idea is of that sentence is do the work before you do the work. It's not finish the work before you do the work, but to start doing that kind of inner work before you start thinking about what can I change out there, what can I, so it sounds very, very platitudinal, but the idea is you look inside first, you learn to love yourself from the position that you're in, and then that takes you to the next space. And so we try and find ourselves and move ourselves towards a position where we can love wholly and exist in loving relationships. And before we step into our organizing spaces, and then we carry that intention of loving wholly and of being loved wholly, receiving love, I think is a really important part of how we intend to show up in our political organizing spaces, to also receive love. And it never ends, that kind of work. It's always a constant journey. So it's like, it's more, this is a simplified version. It's more like start doing the work before you start doing the work. And I think there's definitely different conceptions of what work is in the political organizing space. And this is one that I really specifically tie to the work on being, and specifically on relinquishing power. And that's something that I'm going to talk about more. But about what exactly that power is. And it's something that I connect more to your position in society and within structures of oppression than sort of like job status and that kind of power. That's boring. We don't talk about that power. We also do need to talk about that power. So this means that you're doing the work on recognizing your privilege, understanding how you benefit from white supremacy, patriarchy, British colonial domination, extraction, and ecocide. So those are all things that we don't like, but that in various ways, depending on who we are and where we sit in that, we benefit from. So how do we recognize what power that might give us? And as I said, for people that are facing multiples oppression, this is about tasting the fruits of liberation whilst we still work for its next phase. So we simultaneously try and taste the fruits of liberation whilst we keep pushing for a more free world for everyone else at the same time. And the thing I always come back to is my family from the Caribbean. And so the kind of continual narrative that I have in terms of why I keep doing this work is that if it wasn't for the work and the work, then I would still be on the field reaping sugar for my slave master. And so that makes me my ancestors' wildest dreams. And so learning to love and unlearning the internalized racisms and homophobias and femphobia is a part of embodying a love politics that has to go a lot deeper than just you don't just get off the plantation and stay miserable. You also have to work through why it is that we've been, all of the ancestral trauma you're carrying, and so many things to get to this place of a deep love politics. And I believe that basically political change happens because people who are in relationship with each other do stuff together. In order to do stuff together, you've got to take good care of each other, take good care of yourself. And the starting point for that is love. And so we start with love for ourselves, for our minds, for our bodies and our spirits, and for those closest to us, and then all beings. And that includes the non-human world as well. So if I am nature, I can't truly love myself unless I love the beyond human. And I think that for me is also a foundational kind of aspect of what love politics means to me. So, next preposition. Love over, love as, love under. So I'll invite you to, what I'm going to do is split you into, so the first three tables here, I want you to have a chat with the people next to you and talk about what you think love over might mean. I'm just going to do this for 1 minute. 1 minute. 3 tables, just talk about what you think love over might mean. The back 3 tables, what you think love as might mean. And the front 3 tables, what you think love under might mean. So there's more at the back, but it's fine. Okay, I'm going to start with, starting with my love over crew over here. What were some thoughts, feelings that you had about what love over might mean? Oh, drop the mic. Can I move?
Hi there. We had love over barriers, love over distance, love despite or over things that are difficulties, love overcomes, and love over giving. What about giving?
We had love as the one constant overarching factor if you had any big decisions to make in politics or in your own life. That whatever factors you had to consider, you always had love over the top of it.
We were less good. I'm joking. No. We said very much the same as Chris, but the only other thing we added was about maybe love over being a bit like a teacher over a classroom, or something that feels a bit more paternalistic, potentially. Okay. Yeah. Love as? Oh, you want it back? Sorry.
Thank you very much. So I'm just going to go through the love over concept a little bit first. So I think you definitely touched on a lot of what I was thinking with when I think of love over, which is that I think it's a good. I'll go through the whole journey of love over, love as, love under. But love over, essentially, for me, came from this. This is a bit mathematical. I do like a good equation. So this is sort of how I came to love over, which is that for me, I often find that violence comes when power meets fear. So the fear comes from the potential loss of power. And in order to hold on to power, often violence is then, whacked myself in the face with the microphone. Sorry. Skills. So and I think this can be seen on a sort of interpersonal level. I think this can be seen in our relationship to land and plants. I think often when we think something's about to take us over, or something's about to become beyond our power, we commit acts of violence to repress it. So power with, for me, equates to freedom from fear. Not equates to, but there's a definite correlation between those two. There's this really beautiful Nina Simone quote where an interviewer asks her, what does freedom mean to you? And she says, I tell you what freedom means to me. No fear. And the idea that freedom is about not being afraid, being able to live in your full self unafraid. And I think that often comes with power with. So that's when we're in relationship, when we're together with people, we feel stronger. And so we embody a kind of deeper sense of liberation because we feel solid in our relationships and collaborations. So that took me to this place where it's like, okay, so if you move actually away from power over, from the colonial dominating patriarchal kind of methods of power that we're used to in our society, and we move towards power with, we then get to a place of freedom. And within that freedom, love then becomes the overarching thing. Because we have to be, our relations have to be founded on love. And that's what keeps us in that space of freedom. However, I think I'm just going to complicate this a little bit. Because I think what we often find with power with is that we run out a little bit of how far our with goes. So the with isn't always sufficient. Because we can say, okay, like in Morecambe, we want power with each other to be in great community together. Great. What about the people outside of Morecambe? So it's also not just about loving with those who you can see and touch, but loving as life. So before I go any further on that, does anyone from the Love As team want to say what they were thinking?
Yeah, I think the first one is love as was an acceptance in terms of you're loving everyone as they are without any judgment, without any fear. You're loving society without any prejudgment, and you're just pouring love onto the situation. The other one was love as a resource, and Roger will explain more about it.
Yeah, I will this afternoon.
Anyone from here? Any others? Gas.
I just got love as if you love as you would like to be loved, like overall, and love as if our lives depend on it. So in relation to the planet and all, other organisms and all that, that's kind of what I got. We got.
Amazing. Anything here extra?
Love others as you love yourself as you love others, love as you love everyone as you love, and love as if love as is everything.
Anything extra from this table? Will you love ours as well? No? Okay.
Amazing, amazing. I think a lot of that, I think, really deeply resonates with me, and I think that comment on love as if your life depended on it, I think it does. I think our lives really do depend on how we love and how we can love. So the love as. So in my work, we talk about building power a lot. We want to build power in communities so that the top-down powers can't control our lives, because generally the top-down powers are the ones that neglect, they're the ones that commit violence. And so we seek power in communities so that we can, in communities defined as beings in relationship of love, care, listening, and compassion with each other, have the rights of self-determination. So that's sort of a lot of community organizing theory is all about power building in communities. And when we build power with communities, we challenge a system that believes that success is zero-sum, that success can only be one-sided, that it's a win-lose situation. Our entire capitalist system of extraction and wealth accumulation is built on competition over collaboration. So in building power with, we completely dismantle the idea that that's the only way that we can thrive. So being in community, loving collaborative, and building power by being in relationship with life, create centers and hubs of love to support those who are trying to recenter love in their lives but don't have the support around them. Those are the ways that we build community and that we center love with and power with. But the reason that I come from that love over to the love as is because we have to, after we sort of build those communities, we have to figure out ways to also love that which we can't see. And that's where I come to this point of love as life. So rather than kind of getting stuck and tribal and doubling down on those who are around us and protecting like our own at the expense of others, we love as life, meaning that, and a lot of this, I think the reason that I say love as life as well is because that for me also talks to what it means to love as if you were more interconnected with the world beyond humans. So as if you, love as if you are everything that is alive, love as if you are all life, love as nature, love as your community, love as the community you can't see as well. And if we get stranded in the people that we can see, being our siblings, being the people that we call brother and sister, then we build clusters rather than building a love as life. Yeah? Kind of? I'll take it. So, then you get to love under people. What did we have?
Okay, on our table, we were talking about love understands. Love understands the backstories. Love as underpinning. Love under preconceptions, ideas, your own and others. And love under is a deep love. Does that sum it? Right, okay. Yeah, it's the foundation. It's sort of drills down.
We had things like love under pressure, love under stressful situations, loving the person that is underneath, no matter what behaviours they're displaying on the outside. Did we have any others? We had. Yeah, that was about it. Yeah, that was about it. I think. Yeah.
We came up with a few suggestions. Love as understanding, as in love as service, and also love under oppression. And I think we were probably approaching the discussion of how maybe to love our oppressors, which suggests understanding what love is in terms of the kindest thing to do to our oppressors or with our oppressors is to bring an end to the power that is abusive. So, is there anything else? That's it.
I really struggled with this, love under, but listening around the room afterwards, it could mean lack of love, lack of compassion, lack of comparing. I don't know. Not what you feel.
We came up with, after there was a split in the conversation over there, and we were like, oh, not sure what to do here. Love under all circumstances. And I think the underpinning was what we were looking for when we said love should be a foundation for everything, under all circumstances.
Yes, wonderful. And I think that's exactly it. It's love under everything, love as the underpinning. I really liked what you said as well about, I think it was love despite. Love under pressure. And I think that there's another preposition I'd introduce, which is love through, which I also think is a really important part of, at least like I know in the ways that I work, that actually it's not just, so the love under everything is love as the underpinning, actually. It's not so I think the love over sometimes can become that, I think it sets in a sort of tribalism and can also set in a paternalism that actually took me to a place of love under. So you start as love as the foundation and the undercurrent, the underpinning. and everything you do sits on top of that, but actually sits in that. But also, it also means that I think sometimes we forget that our foundations are there and we don't know why we're so steady. You just become complacent to them. So that also introduces this idea of love through, which I'm making up because you just said it and I appreciated it. Which is that when you're on those foundations and you hit a rocky path, you still love through that. And love is the center of how you make those decisions and how you decide how to engage with the life that's challenging for you. So thank you for all of those contributions. So yeah, love under everything as the root of all our work and our foundations of what it sits on. Love first and love last. I've got a good friend who always uses the word boundless, and I just so appreciate the use of that word in what the image that it conjures for me in the sense of freedom. And I think love is boundless. There is a boundlessness to love. That means that we have an endless capacity to give love and to receive love. So it's just nurturing that so that we can consistently expand who comes into our love networks. And I think similarly, that question of loving our oppressors comes into loving ourselves, essentially, and loving as life. And when we're able to love deeply as life, we are able to love beyond borders, if you like. So we complicate now. I feel like I'm going over time, I'm sorry. So I'm just going to complicate a little bit more this idea of building power. I think this might be on the next. Oh, too soon. So we don't only want a power with, we want a capacity to build and to relinquish power. We want a love that is free from the fear of losing power. I'm just going to repeat that. So the idea is, so complicating the notion of building power, we don't only want a power with, we want a capacity to build power and a capacity to relinquish power simultaneously. So coming back to this violence, what we want is to take violence out of our spaces, right? And in order to take violence out of the spaces that we organize in, we have to then relinquish the fear of losing power, which all of us, I feel confident in saying all of us have to some degree a fear of losing power. No one likes to feel like they can no longer control what's going on around them. So how do we take away that fear of losing power? So this is this concept, building power while simultaneously learning to relinquish. To build power with, you need to balance power between, and to do that, you need to relinquish power over. So relinquishing power over on an interpersonal level is a lot about learning to the ways in which your interactions with life and with people are rooted in a power dynamic. Right? Are we with me so far? Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Great. So, we're here. Okay. Developing the capacity to relinquish power to those with less power and less privilege is an act of love. That's the idea, right? So this means we have to accept the ways in which we're molded by society and the ways in which we use power every day, because that's how we're taught to maneuver, essentially. And that power can come from a number of structures of oppression. But when we talk about structures of oppression, it's not just these certain marginalized people get beat up in the streets. It's like these certain groups of people have less relative power to people that don't sit within those groups. So whether that's LGBT community, migrants, trans people, people of color, there's a daily lived experience of not having as much power as the next person. So what do you do as the next person who doesn't endure that oppression? Recognizing your privilege and relinquishing your power when you're in that dynamic is an act of love and an act of liberation for both of you, because that's freeing you from the structure of oppression that dictates how you're supposed to engage. Cool. So, accepting the ways in which society molds us and being honest with ourselves and others about how that shows up in our behavior and relationships is a part of relinquishing power as an act of love. Too often we seek power to fill the holes of whether that's about masculinity not being man enough, or whether that's about wealth not being wealthy enough, successful enough, whatever it may be, it's impossible to move out of that place if we're too busy denying that it exists. So we first have to recognize how those structures of oppression impact the way that we behave and the way that we use power with others or over others. And if we can accept and hold the problematic notions and ideas and behaviors that we're socialized into, and learn to love ourselves wholly, regardless of all of the faults that we have and the ways that we are flawed, because we're socialized to be oppressors, as well as oppressed, victims and perpetrators at the same time, then we have a better chance of letting go of that toxic masculinity, or of that capitalist consumerist way of thinking, or of those colonial mindsets that entice us into domination. So, build power, simultaneously relinquish it, free yourself from ego. Yeah? And that's the deepest freedom for me, personally, in my life. And that's how we organize. And yeah, so it's worth noting as well that there are lots and lots of oppressions out in the world, and most of us we don't get taught about in schools what the lived experiences of trans women is in public space, and how we can use our power as cisgendered people that don't identify as trans better in order to create a society that is more liberatory. We don't learn those things. So we have a lot of learning to do. And it's okay for us to not know, because often we're not told by accident, and often we're not told on purpose, because these issues aren't ones that people want to confront. And if you're not aware of the power that you're holding and how you're using it, you can't relinquish it, essentially. So, and that relinquishment allows us to be freer, truer to ourselves, breathe out and be grateful. This means not serving ego, and also in the eco-feminist space, this means kind of moving away to bureaucracy and high-tech solutions to human problems. And I only use the eco-feminist space as an example, where there's a lot of different kinds of thinkers that also speak to this way of manifesting a love politics that challenges the concept of the rational, and embraces instead the concept around centering care and moving from the brain stuff to the emotion stuff in a space of fearlessness. Because we are a society that's committed to logic, and yet the logic of exponential growth upon which the global economy is based is hurtling hundreds of species, including humans, off a cliff. So I don't think it's working. So going back to body, mind, and spirit, we can start to do listening differently and listen to different parts of ourselves, listen to different parts of our ecosystems, and interrogate our intentions, moving beyond the systems of so-called rational knowledge that are failing us. Love and. This is, does anyone know what these photos are of, actually? Anyone? Hey. I mean, yeah, it actually says it there. 10 points to Gryffindor. So, Stonewall riots, 70 something, maybe. New York, 60, 70, 69. That's exactly that. Stonewall riots, 1969. I'm really inspired by the Stonewall riots and queer struggle in general, because I think it's the perfect articulation of how love and struggle are one and the same, and that people have to fight to love. And yeah, that these riots came from a place of both rage and love at the same time. And they were rooted in a love came under everything in this space, and they loved with and loved together in order to create this kind of change. So love and action is kind of my closing call. Love and work. Love is work. Loving oneself is a lot of hard work. loving life that we could just dominate and abuse can often feel like a lot of work as well. It does, and I think it's especially in my journey around what that means for my relationship with nature, actually realizing how difficult it is to do the harder thing of not dominating but loving as. It's a hard journey. It's a lot of work. But it is a privilege to be able to love without being oppressed, as these photos kind of illustrate. So we fight to love and we love to fight. That's it, really. Empathy, relinquishing, love, joy, stuff like that.